But what in the Canon R5 is that? All right, so look, Sony just dropped a new camera, the Sony A1, and boy, what a camera that is. I'm pretty sure you must have seen a lot of videos online already, but I thought I would also drop my 2 cents on the camera, and that's what I'm doing. So let's get it going. What's going on, beautiful people? Ed Governor right here, and you are definitely welcome back to the channel. Today in this video, we're going to be talking about the A1, which is the brand new release from Sony. In the past couple months, Sony has just been killing the game, releasing camera after camera, and these cameras haven't disappointed, all the way from the FX6 to the A7S Mark III and now the A1. So I'm pretty psyched for this camera, even though I don't think I'm going to be getting it because one, is out of my league, two, it doesn't get up my needs, and three, I feel like it's a little bit overpriced, if you know what I mean. But anyways, we're gonna jump into all those things later on. So what I think this camera is basically is Sony taking the best camera photo camera body they have and combining that with the best mirrorless video camera they have and just putting that into one body and doing a little bit extra to make it better. That's what I think, because when you look at the photo specs, they're pretty good. You look at the video specs as well, they're pretty good. So it's kind of interesting to see that approach. So if you want to have everything in one body, then probably this is the way to go. So kudos to Sony for, you know, doing all this. Is, I think, by far one of the best mirrorless camera bodies that, you know, has been put out there in the market. Nothing compares to it in terms of the specs, at least on paper. You know, we're still waiting to see what the real life performance of this camera is going to be like. So that said, let's jump into a few more details about the camera, starting with some of the photo specs. They say it's a 50 megapixel sensor, which can shoot up to 30 frames per second in burst mode. So that's crazy if you ask me. Crazy if you ask me. You're looking at a 50 megapixel sensor shooting 30 frames per second. Those files are going to be huge. Trust me, they're going to be huge, and that will mean you will need a lot of storage. But again, with the autofocus on this camera, they say it's pretty crazy, real-time autofocus, and given some of the footage that I've seen, it's pretty good, quite impressive stuff. Now let's jump into the video specs of this camera, and straight off the bat, one thing you're going to notice, which is a big difference for Sony mirrorless bodies, is that this camera can shoot 8K internally. Okay, that's crazy. For me, I don't really think that's so much of an excitement having 8K, because 4K is good enough for what I do, and most of the time I master my videos in 1080 anyways. The clients like it that way. I just shoot 4K, then downsize to 1080, and that works pretty fine. So it's nice to have the 8K. But here's the speculation. I think the 8K that you're gonna get from this camera is going to be in 8-bit 420. And the reason why I say so is because during the release, when they were presenting the camera, they just mentioned that the camera can shoot 8K. But when they were talking about the 4K, they specifically said it could do 4K 10-bit 422. If at all it could do 8K 10-bit 422, I think that would have been a huge selling point, and they would have emphasized on that, but they didn't do that. So I don't know. Again, like I said, it's just my speculation. I might be wrong. Let me know what you think. Anyways, let's jump into the 4K. As you already know, like the A7S Mark III, it can do 4K up to 120 frames per second in 10-bit 422. That's pretty good. Most of the stuff that people shoot nowadays is going to be in 4Ks anyway, and to have 10-bit 422, that is pretty good. So we're not really going to talk much about that, as we already know how the A7S Mark III performs in terms of that one. A great addition to this camera is the S Cinetone, something that you'll find in the FS7 and the FX6, and I think the Venice as well. So to see that it's been implemented into a mirrorless body is quite good. I think the colors are pleasant. A lot of people like it, and a lot of people wish they had it on the A7S Mark III. but that was missing, and to see them put it onto this one is quite interesting. This camera can also shoot RAW. It can shoot RAW externally up to 16-bit through HDMI Type A. So that's a good thing. It's nice to know that that option is there. If you want to have it, you can use it. I don't think a lot of content creators are gonna be shooting RAW for their YouTube stuff, and I personally don't think that this camera is meant for YouTubers or content creators. I think it has a very specific audience, which I would say it's directed a lot more towards wildlife photographers as well as sports photographers. At least that's what I think. So I don't know, what do you think? Tell me what you think. Who do you think this camera was made for? Was it made for YouTubers? Was it made for, you know, wedding photographers? Or what kind of photographers was it made for? What's the target audience for this camera? And given the fact that you don't see a flip screen on it, also tells you that, you know, they didn't build this camera thinking about YouTube content creators. So quite a different approach from the A7S Mark III. So yeah, that's just something for you to think about. When it comes to the stabilization in this camera, it's pretty good, 5-axis internal stabilization, and it also has an active mode which works right up to 4K 60p, but it crops slightly. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, but I don't think it's going to make so much of a difference anyway. So the autofocus as well looks really amazing. I think so, at least. And it uses autofocus as well, even in video mode, which is pretty amazing if you ask me. They're claiming 15 plus stops of dynamic range in this camera, and I think that's something that we already expected, given that the A7S Mark III does it, and a lot of other mirrorless bodies do that as well. So, and when it comes to other features, I think they added quite a few as well. They have a USB Type-C, which has crazy transfer speeds of up to what, 10 gigabytes per second. That's just crazy. And I think they also mentioned some other features that you get if you're using the Sony Xperia or something like that. We're not going to jump into that, but it has an Ethernet connection as well as internal Wi-Fi, which just helps you, you know, do wireless stuff seamlessly. Anyways, those are some of the specs of this camera. Let's draw a conclusion. So, is this camera a good camera? Yes, personally, I think it's a really good camera. At least on paper. I always say on paper, because sometimes with these cameras, when you look at them on paper, they look pretty good, and when you put them in a real life scenario, they don't perform as good as you expected them to. So judging off of the specs of paper, they look pretty amazing, and it's an overall good camera. Going down to the specs, I personally think that some specs are just a little bit too much, like maybe the 8K, and that's very subjective. Some people want it, some people will love it. For me, I don't feel like I'm going to be using it for anything I'm doing. 4K is just good enough for me. When it comes to the price point, this camera comes in at what, $6,500 US. That's a wee bit too much, ain't it? When it comes to the price, I just think it's a little bit overpriced, and yeah, that's just my opinion. And also, I think that the camera is very niche specific. It doesn't appeal to a wide range of audience, you know. It is not for YouTubers, it's not for content creators. When you're looking at some of the features of the camera, it doesn't really apply. For example, it's missing the flip screen, unlike the A7S Mark III. So that already goes a long way to tell you that these ain't for YouTube content creators, you know. So you need to keep that in mind. Overall, I think it's a pretty good camera. Nice specs, overspec'd, overpriced, very niche specific. But that's just what I think. I would like to know what you think about this camera. Go down in the comment sections and tell me if you agree with some of the speculations I made in terms of the 8K being 8-bit 420, and if you disagree or if you agree, and you know, let me know what you think and drop your reason down below why as well. And are you one of those who's gonna get this camera? Let me know, because for me, I don't think I'm gonna get it. I'm just gonna wait until someone around me gets it, and I could maybe borrow it and test it out for a couple of days. But besides that, Like I said, this camera doesn't cater for my needs, and the price is just a little bit overboard for me, so nah, thanks. Rain check on that one. But anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for sticking around. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and I'm done. I'll see you in the next one. Yes. Ah man, I don't even know how to start these videos.